you finally play them, right? So to you, this could just be, you know, it could be a hi-hat, like, I don't know. So, question, how do you glue things together? I understand that your mix master your own tracks, do you mix, so yeah, my master channel is literally just the ozone maximizer and an OTT. And this is something that a lot of people, I remember back in the day, were just like having a problem with. You put OTT on a master? Yeah, I do. 10, 15% maximum, boost up the high end if I really need. I find like this is really good, like just so easy to control. Like if you're just lacking a bit of high end, just boost up the high end knob. Just, you know, have it ready there. Ozone maximizer on the IRC4. I'm currently in classic mode because it generates a small latency for the stream. Obviously, I don't want to be dealing with transient, but whenever you're exporting, make sure you're using transient. That's literally all I would put. Sometimes I would replace the Ozone 8 maximizer with a Pro L2, and just use like a really loud preset in there. Okay, let's just get to the sections first. So this is how I group things in pretty much all of my music. So I think that's just general grouping and how it should look like in general. The drum group and the music group. So I'm trying to balance the volume of this to be -10 always, and then the volume of music to be -10 as well. So it's the balance of, you know, those two groups. Obviously, the sub should be always separate. Something that I'm trying to control by grouping different subs. If I do have different subs on the same, you know, in the same different sub patches rather, or sub harmonics on in the same track, song rather. That way I can group them all into a subs group, put a limiter on the whole thing, you know, gain, put some input gain on top, and make sure it only clips all of the sub at like a specific volume. I can't remember which volume this is in particular, but -10, yeah. So this is kind of like what I do with like the grouping part. Nesting nests inside of like other nests is how things just get easy, because you get to organize things so nicely. Here you see my silly names for different sounds that I make. But yeah, let's just go. Okay, so I got subs, basses, synths, which is generally the layers of, you know, the supersaw group, which is this really loud sound. Lead, so this is what I only started doing about 2 to 3 years ago. I would basically separate the lead from the backing. Like from experience, whenever there's a company or some sort of sync deal that you're dealing with, let's say it is Rocket League. Luckily, in this case, they didn't request any stems. But sometimes when a company would hit you up and ask for specific stems, they want them in a specific, according to like a particular specification. Whereas the drums is one stem, just all of the drums, no kicks and snares separate. They really don't need that. And let's say they're going to be using your song for like I don't know, like a commercial of some sorts. Sometimes they might need just like 4 seconds of the drums on their own with some sort of tom roll. So you have to provide them just with that. So separating, the most important thing, what I'm trying to get to, is separating the leads from the backing synths. I should actually call this the backing, because when you're going to see these specs, you're going to often see, please send the stems in this particular order. It's going to be drums, subs, basses, backing, lead. So by backing, basically this incorporates everything from like arpeggios, chord, like super saws in this particular case, that just happen in the background, kind of like follow the track, whereas the lead is usually the main melody of the song. So and then in the background you have this. So this is the backing, right? You don't want to have this colliding. You don't want to have this colliding with. This is super technical. I'm not sure why I'm talking about this, but okay. So this is the groups, and then of course effects at the end in case they want to have all these risers and fallers and impacts and all sorts of sweeps and swoops. Okay, so gosh, it's been a long time since I streamed. Okay, let's go. Let's go with the drums. So this is literally like a loop that I found, and I think I repitched it from like from 130 to 150. So originally it sounds. This is the first time I actually decided to put vocal synth on a drum, a drum set or drum group. Yeah, I'm gonna go hella technical, Alex. No problem. I'm getting a bunch of friend requests which are covering my chat window. Sorry. So this is when it goes raw. For some reason, it's still pitching it up. I'm not sure why. It's pretty much how it sounded originally, so I slowed it down to 150 because we're obviously at 150, best dubstep tempo, don't at me. And I put vocal synth on it, and some FL filter. 2 years ago, I still worked in Pro Q2 for some reason. Did some stuff to it that I think required, you know, what I really like about this particular vocal synth patch. Like, please stop sending me friend requests, guys. It's not helping. I can't see the chat. Thanks though. So I put it for a vocal synth with a Biovox vocoder, CompuVox, TalkVox, and Polyvox. This is pretty much the exact same vocal synth patch that I came up with for the voice. That just goes along throughout the entire album. Those of you who listen to the album know what I'm talking about. And after that, the magical plugin of Suv 2. Used to be Suv 1, but before I started the stream, I noticed that I don't own Suv 1 anymore because I've been upgraded. So, yeah, Suv 2. So I replaced all the Suv 1s with Suv 2s. What it does is gets rid of a bunch of harshness from certain frequencies. This is technically like it's just literally throw it on the master, and you'll notice a massive difference if you think that your sound if you play your song loud enough and all of a sudden something is like, ah, that hurt, put this on and check what actually changes, especially in like 3,000 to 4,000, maybe even 5,000 hertz range. So these are the exact frequencies that it's getting rid of. To some ears, these are very painful. So I decided to basically just get rid of those particular, you know, fluctuations of frequencies around that area. Then I have like a little supporting soar loop, which this is one of my favorite like glitch percussion packs. If I show you this, SOR. They have these all sorts of like these cool loops. I believe this is actually from like a micro house kind of pack. Like, I'm not even sure where I got these from, but SOR, whatever that stands for. And yeah, I took a bunch of those samples, cut them up in specific like orders. And they just kind of complement the original drum that comes in after 8 bars. Then I have this kick and snare coming in, I think. Oh, it's just like a little analog kick. So yeah, what you're gonna notice is a little the XIL. Sometimes, like, actually, I believe from 5, I think it was 4, 5, 6 years ago, I released 2 sample packs on Splice called the Xylent Power Pack 1 and Power Pack 2. So you're gonna notice me use a lot of those samples. This is something that I can't advise you enough. If you have like a week to spare, I'm sure some of you probably don't, literally make as many sounds, like build your own sound library, if you know what I mean. Like just kind of go through your serum patches, export all your favorite stuff into audio, and just literally make a catalog just for yourself that you're gonna kind of establish your sound with in like the long run. That's actually what's gonna happen. So it just speeds up things so much easier. Like, so, for example, I often want to do something like when I have a kick and the clap, the last clap of a particular sequence, I want to have like very reverby, so it's like a and like kind of just dies. So I just decided to export one of those just for later, because I know I'm always going to need that sound, instead of having to apply the reverb, do the automation, you know, export a bunch of stuff, and then finally get rid of that reverb again because it's on the channel, it's just sitting, it's taking up my CPU. So I just decided to export a bunch of stuff that you find useful later. So make templates, super useful. Yeah, I can't stress that enough. sit down and make boring sounds you never want to make during songwriting. Like, exactly, Julian. Exactly, Julian. Like, just try to save as much time. Put your like mind space just for like just making all sorts of sounds, and then go full into writing the next day, and just take those sounds that you made from the previous day. This is pretty much when it comes to the drums for the intro. Let's get into the basses. A lot of this stuff was done with Contact Signal and Contact Substance. These are actually quite... these are one of the initial patches that you even get when you open those. I believe those are by Output. Yeah, this is Signal. So we're talking about this one in particular. Obviously what I did here is I bounced it to audio. This is still a MIDI track, which is awesome. But I just deactivated the contact instrument so it completely, you know, doesn't take my CPU whatsoever. So you can keep the instrument there as long as it's in audio. You'll still have access to it in case you want to build some more MIDI around it, you know, program more notes and stuff. That was too high of a note, that's why nothing played. Yeah, so that's one. That's gonna be another substance, unless it's something else. Signal, rather. Why am I saying substance? But that's an octave lower. Even lower. Yeah. So, on the patch itself, there's FabFilter Pro Q, because it's 2 years ago, so Q3 didn't exist yet. Got rid of some of the low end because I wanted the low end to be done by the backing kind of sub. This actually should be in the sub group, now that I think about it. Why am I fixing this? This song is already out for 2 years. There's no point in fixing this. But yeah, this song, I mean, this track should be in the subs group because this is technically a sub. I hope the laptop speaker users will enjoy this part because we're not getting anywhere outside of 300 Hertz. This is a silent patch. Oh my god, that is huge. That is big. Yeah. I believe there's been an update to silent. I don't think I've updated. I think I skipped that update. And then there's Toraverb on it. Highly advised. At least it worked really well. But now that I noticed that with Pro R, when it comes to reverb, you can actually visualize the reverb and you can like equalize it in post. And what Pro R is awesome about, you can do multiband tail length, which is awesome. Like, let's say you have a snare, but you only want that to be ringing out for a longer period of time than the actual, you know? You want that to stay where it is, and that, so Pro R has that built in super nicely. But yeah, I mean, Toraverb, whatever. Pro Q, this is, I believe, for an automation. I'm doing some frequency automation here later because I wanted to probably get rid of some high end or something. I'm not sure why this is here. But that's what I would do if I ever want to do a filter. I don't necessarily use like auto filter, which is something you have in Ableton. What I would do is just apply a Pro Q and do a, you know, low end band automation, and I just automate this stuff. Doesn't seem to be an automation there. I guess I just put it there just in case. And lo and behold, one of the most underrated plugins advised to me by Guy Arthur, RC20, Retro Color. Great for everything, for subs, for saturating drums, for making lo-fi music. Like, it's just incredible. Like, check it out. I'm not sure why it's here. It's good for like chiptune, digitizing, wobble, cassette effects. It's got all sorts of like distortion types. I'm using Tube Air here. Have I tried Ableton? Yeah, I used to use Ableton way, like a long time ago. I would only use Ableton when I would do something like a studio mix or like a podcast or something. That was before. That was still when I would use Cubase full time. That was Cubase 5 or 6. That's why I love Ableton, Bitwig, because it has that beautiful mixer view. Something that Ableton just kind of misses, if you know what I mean. Like, I just love I just love seeing all these, you know, being able to edit the volume, just seeing the latencies on each one of those channels. It's great stuff. So that's the low end. Okay, I put it in a subgroup. Luckily, there's nothing on the subgroup that will alter it in any way. And we're at 0 decibels. That's good. I'm not going to alter the sound of the song accidentally. That's good. Nothing here. Some effects, some crash reverse, some AU5 boom sub. Really good impact. Some smash clap and reverb. Some more Tora reverb on it. How long were you producing before you were proud of what you were making? So, Eric, to answer your question, I don't think I'm still proud. Okay, no, I'm joking. Like, there is a specific level where you're just like, yeah, I finally got there. I believe that was probably around this album. I think, yeah, 2000s, like late 2018, 2019 is when I finally got like this particular like set of skills. I don't know why I put that sentence into these words. A particular set of skills that I think just will work. And then what I used to be like is I would just every year I would come back to my production from last year and just cringe looking at how I would make things. Like, for example, looking at this project, I'm slightly cringing. Why? Because I would not use a bus track for, let's say, some room ambience or reverb, or I would just put all the Tora verbs, all the reverb delay plugins straight on the channel that I want there to be a reverb on, and then I would just automate the mix on that reverb. One example is this, for example, vocal Kara. Like, let's check out the vocal real quick. The reason why there's 2 channels for this particular vocal is because this channel has delay on it, and this one doesn't. Okay, so check it out. Feel me in the darkness. Don't do that. just use one track and do a send bus with an automation lane that will send reverb or delay to that particular bus. I don't know. Just don't ask me. But how did you find the strength to release Far Prior for being proud? Prior, yeah. That's a great question, because like I don't want to say peer pressure. It was more like just the influence of everyone around me. Back when I was starting with melodic dubstep, it was, you know, it was like the early days of Seven Lions. We're talking back when I would literally play a headline show with Seven Lions. And actually, no, he was still headlining, but I was like right underneath. Like, there were times where he would, you know, be releasing on Viper Records before any Ausla, and times where Elenium had a support slot underneath my name on certain shows, like those times. So all of us as artists, I think we just influence each other. Good friends of Chime, AU5, we Base Aura, we, like off the top of my head, we often just, you know, exchange ideas. I listen to someone else's song, they listen to mine, and just everything's like a remix, you know, everything just intertwines, like saying that, you know, oh, this sounds kind of like that particular artist, or hey, your song kind of sounds like that, or his song kind of sounds like yours. Well, yeah, because we all kind of influence like ourselves, you know. Viper Records is the shit. You should get on Slander's new label. Yeah. I'm actually working on an EP. I'm probably going to be trying to release on Never Say Die, maybe Monster Cat. I still don't know, but it's pretty much finished. I just need to wrap it up. A couple of collaborations. I know Voltra really wanted to do a track together. Let's get to effects. Effects are here. So, okay, basically the next step is the lead. So we're talking about a plug made with, I don't know, because I exported it to audio. And I actually got rid of the initial plugin that was doing it. So, I mean, what could it be? This could be Serum, Sawwave with some filtering, you know, and some reverb. The beauty of layering here, though, is that there's just so many. I did this is done with Kinetic Metal. I treat it as just the transients because this is just making that little texturized transient of like the initial click of this particular synth. This is made with Sakura. I also removed it from the plugin for some reason. But yeah, Sakura has a really nice kind of ethnic sounding pluck in there. I really enjoy it. I would say this is like the main meat of this particular lead. I just like how this glassy sound from Kinetic Metal with tons of different inserts on it just adds that nice little glassy click to it. Got that saw. There's also some saw, slightly detuned in higher notes. There's like a square with some reverb and arpeggio repetitions. Yeah. More Kinetic Metal. This is piano, I believe, from... back then I would use either Alicia's Keys or The Gentleman from Complete 11. Shout out to Native Instruments for giving me Complete 11 Ultimate for free. See, this is why I regret not leaving MIDI in, because you could actually see all the velocity automations on the MIDI on this. There's actually a lot of work to make it sound semi-natural, you know, without breaking structure and dequantizing certain piano notes, because obviously when human hands play on a piano, they don't play it perfectly, so you might want to dequantize certain sounds, but not in this particular case, not with that many layers of synths and all sorts of stabs being, you know, applied on top of one another, so... just a sub. Oh, I kind of get why I put this low pad into the lead group, because it's technically in the backing group, because it's technically still a pad. The sub is right here. Effects. Yeah, these are just a couple of impacts. Really nice, clean swell by AU5. Shout out Austin. Let me read some, because you guys are probably asking something that I missed. This is the coolest breakdown so far. Oh, thank you, Rowan. Yeah, the lead is the main focus, so when you mute the lead. How am I doing my sub? Good question. Finally some questions. Unless you guys have been asking them and I just missed them all. Sorry. It's so in general, I would put a serum. See, I love that I can just put a serum on this audio track and just generate you a quick little serum patch. So in serum, you have this wavetable called digital FFT add seconds, which is technically a sine wave that adds harmonics the higher you go. I need to input all ins. There we go. So when you put the wavetable position up, it's going to generate the second harmonic and is going to keep generating the harmonics gradually and by the same ratio. Super overlooked wavetable that is right there built into Serum. So instead of having to saturate your Purine sub, which is right here, it's also a good sub. And, you know, Serum also gives you this little oscillator shape right next to it that's like slightly more saturated. When you look at them through like an EQ, this one is slightly... See, this one is not just a sine wave. It's a good sub. Slightly different harmonics between these two. But how I would do my sub is completely ignore this sub portion. Oh, because there's already distortion. Oh my god, I was like, wait a minute, why is this sub so meaty? There you go. That's the sub. That's the actual sub. Ignore the previous stuff. And it generates these like, I think these are thirds? I can't tell. So I ignore that completely. And I just turn the knob. That's the first, second, fourth. So what I do is just set it to like a position 4. So that the second harmonic is slightly quieter than the first one. That way you don't have to equalize anything out of sub. But if you want to make it even more beefy, then having RC20 right before this, right before EQ, so we can see what's actually happening with what RC20 is doing. This is what my good friend Guy Arthur is also doing. So what I would do is put a crunch distortion on this, which is going to boost up the output. So I'm going to trim down the volume a little bit. And what it does, you can see it generates these like warmth, kind of. Like if I push it too hard, you're going to hear the crackle. But if you put it like at 60, 50, sometimes 70, of course you can equalize it later, but like adding any sort of EQ that's zero latency and not linear is just risky for all sorts of reasons. So I'm trying to do as little EQ as possible when it comes to pure tonal stuff like subs, vocals. It's not really pure tonal, but it's super important. Like important stuff that needs to always be there and present. So obviously your sub needs to be mono, but saturating it is a great idea. So this is how I would do it: 65, 70%. Right before this stuff starts to show up, you know, so kind of just keep it there. There you go, that's my sub. Obviously make it mono, make it legato at a particular, you know, so it glides from note to note depending on what kind of style you're going for. If it has a release, if it has a click, you know, if it has one of those, let's say LFO master tune. Yeah, that's one of these, you know, quick clicks that you might want to accomplish. It depends what kind of sound you're going for. But yeah, that's the kind of sub I would go for, if that answers your question. And sometimes something cool to add to the sub is like a little white noise, something that you will filter gradually. So you apply like a little high pass filter to. It also depends on the genre you're going for. Obviously, you don't want to be doing this for like, I don't know. It's tough to say actually. Like, if I'm only going to be applying the high pass to the noise filter, kind of something like this, slightly quieter. Maybe give it an envelope of some sort, so it doesn't start on the impact, but it like kind of comes in later. Maybe a release as well. Something that will kind of give it more texture. You know, it depends what kind of pitch you want to keep that noise at. But sometimes having this kind of, people call it air. You know, that's how they call it in the music production industry. That's air. And having that kind of, you know, this is what adds the whispery voices to Ellie Goulding's vocals. And there's all sorts of analog plugins that push that kind of sound, but with so this is kind of the emulation of like a white noise hiss generated on top of a sub bass. It's kind of cool. It kind of depends on what kind of style you're going for once again. But yeah, just a little trick. Obviously, yeah, don't make your subs stereo unless you're going for like a, you know, weird experimental hybrid trap with really low pass kicks kind of stuff. So yeah, that's my subs, I guess. So I kind of went through the synths. Oh, we got that little initial patch for just a little sine wave with distortion, delay, and it's cool to add like a dimension if you're keeping your unison at 1 and the random knob at 0. It's kind of cool to add that hyper dimension at max and trim all these down to 0. It makes sure that everything's centered but still wide, if you know what I mean. It's hard to describe, but try that instead of generating multiple voices next time, and you might accomplish different results, I guess. What do we have here? Okay, so this is probably the most important thing about, the most interesting thing about the vocals, especially in the verse here. Okay, let's listen to the raw vocal as it was before I dragged and dropped it from Splice. Let's reset all the audio. Let's reset all the.
Feel me in the dark, in the darkness.
Obviously, ignore the reverb and everything that I have on the channel, but that's how low the vocal originally is.
Feel me in the darkness.
That's how low and slow it is. So I put it into LSD Pro, stretched it to fit my 150 tempo, pitched it up by 7 semitones.
Feel me in the dark.
But hey, we have vocal synth now coming in.
Feel me in the dark.
So what I did with vocal synth is I basically put it on that particular vocal group where I have all the Cara vocals with a little reverse swoop you hear in a lot of music these days. Super easy to do. So vocal synth alone, this is what it sounds like. As you can tell, this is MIDI.
Feel me in the darkness. My shadows, they follow you like an accomplice.
How do you avoid all the delay and reverb from making the whole track sound? Elliot, I think you mean basically controlling the tail of each reverb and delay. This is what I'm because this project is 2 years old, it's something that I would still do is basically whenever you're applying like a reverb to a channel, make sure you have a mix automation visible, and you would always, I think it's here, there we go. So in this particular case, I'm keeping reverb for the entirety of the vocal because I want it to be very, you know, anthemy. I want it to sound like it's in a cathedral or some sort of hall. But, you know, having like a little vocal swoop and then cutting it, you know, to kind of generate this kind of like a suction effect, I guess. So the MIDI alone is literally chords that I think are just complementary to the vocal.
Shadows, they follow you like an accomplice.
And luckily with this kind of, I'm still going to call vocal synth a vocoder because it's technically a vocoder. With vocal synth, what's awesome is that you don't need to generate a separate track just for having a full vocoder track and then layer it with the actual vocal. Vocal synth obviously has the mix knob, which is super useful. You know, kind of blending the original vocal with just a little bit of that.
Feel me in the darkness. My shadows, they follow you like an accomplice.
And I think it works really well. Awesome to see you in Defyre. Thank you, Kyle. Means a lot. Volker, how do you approach writing the chords and melodies to work with the vocals? Yeah, basically what you would do is just follow the root progression of your track, which in this particular case we have dum 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 boom. Wait, let me unmute this. Oh, what is this? Dum dum. Follow the root the root progression or the root notes. Build the root notes first, and then build harmonics on top of them. So I would probably start with, you know, oh, it's the wrong part of the. You know, kind of just follow the progression of the song. I mean, can you show how you approach the processing in vocal synth? Yeah, sure. This is it. BioVox vocoder, TalkBox, and Polyvox. Basically, what I would do with this is start small, start what works first and what creates too much chaos, and just kind of get rid of it. In this case, this was just, you know, too robotic, and you just add some sort of like TalkBox to humanize it a little bit more. And of course, there are different types of vocoders, and CompuVox you can add.
My shadows, they follow you. My shadows, they follow you in the dark.
That's actually crazy because Polyvox is the thing that makes the voice kind of sound like it's multiple voices. Actually sounds crazy just by itself, but adding all these, I think I started with Polyvox from some sort of preset, and then I just built kind of my own on top of it. Not using the CompuVox this time though. And of course, all these inserts on top. This case is just chorus. Normally I wouldn't even touch these. For some reason I have just like an aversion of using plugins that are built in, not an aversion, but just kind of I don't deal with, you know, using plugins that are already inside other plugins like EQ. Why would I use an EQ that's in a project that I can use my own, you know, ProQ or something? I'm just kind of used to it. Like I wouldn't use a filter here. I can just put a filter right after the insert. But yeah, let's get to the layers of the synths. Unless you guys have finally a plugin that looks as good as it sounds. Yeah, Vocal Synth is great. Plus you can get Vocal Synth if rent to own, which means you can pay like I believe $5 for a certain amount of time, and then it's finally yours. Splice has that deal. I'm pretty sure they still do. At least that's how I got it. That's how I got Serum as well. A bunch of other projects. Splice is great, guys. Seriously. If you didn't know that, but I'm sure all of you know that already. Let's get to the synth layers, because that's kind of where the most stuff is happening, I believe. There's a couple of these layers here. I got a low pad, but high. Okay. It is. Oh, it's because I took the same patch that I was using for the low pad, which is here somewhere. I moved it around ever since I opened this project. Well, the low pad from the intro, this one. This pad. It's exactly the same one, it's just a way higher note, so I duplicated that, made it into audio for some reason. Supercell 1, which is from my sample pack, which in itself is already a layer of... It's a sample of all sorts of layers, including two different 16 voice supersaws from Serum and Silent combined together, depending on the register, higher and lower, and a contact choir already built into this. You can hear a choir already in there, but I'm layering it with my older supersaw from the first power pack. You can still get on Splice. It's low pass for whatever reason. And then there's also Square note from Serum, which is detuned, has a little reverb, but because I had a lot of reverb, I needed to turn it into really needed to turn it into audio to be able to control that reverb, because I knew I'm gonna be cutting these particular snippets of saws and super saws into like these, you know, I never want any synths or saws to be happening here while I'm having this moment, you know, with like reverb, with this reverb suction that we talked about earlier. Guys, can you do you think that using splice vocals is lame now? It's good for beginners. This project, this album from 2 years ago, is probably the last time I'll ever use splice vocals, sorry, to or at least full top lines. This is like something I don't really feel like I could have done better. Like since then, I'm definitely gonna record. I'm still recording all of my own vocals for every other song that I'm gonna do in the future. But using small little snippets like, hey, here we go, yo, 1, 2, 3, 4, let's go, something like this, it's fine, because you're gonna fuck around with it. You're still gonna, you know, process it in all sorts of ways. You're gonna, you know, apply different pitch shifters to it, you know. So using that kind of stuff is okay, I guess. But full top lines, yeah, just make sure nobody else used it before you. Have I ever used Tone to Gladiator? I've never used Gladiator, no. Can we go over the processing of these layers as well? Yeah, I mean, what sucks about these is because there was so much CPU being used, and I forgot that you can just deactivate an instrument instead of completely deleting it and keeping the audio waveform in itself. So I can't really show you, I can only show you the stuff that I have past or as a post insert after the instrument. So in this particular case, you know, it's like it's just getting rid of some of this rumble in the low end. Here we actually have like it's ditching a lot of the high end that the previous super saw was actually doing. Squares. It's like a heavily detuned high-pitched square from Serum that I high-passed with a lot of reverb. That's why I had to cut it. Snippets? I can't... Oh, this is from Sakura. So it's that exact Sakura pluck from earlier. It's this one. But it's a higher note, and it's looped to fuck, and with a lot of reverb on it. And like a little swoop, I believe there was like a little that brings in some of the high end as it travels through the bar. This is a RNT vocal single. See, yeah, to answer your question, I just used a splice vocal that you can't even tell it's a splice vocal. You know, it's right here. It's layered with it's like a little complementary note that complements this note and this. It's actually the same note. And I got a little ARP, which is a sine ARP from Serum as well. Obviously, you have to, when you're doing like pure Serum wavetable stuff, and you're applying the multiband compressor inside Serum, always look at the EQ, because the multiband compressor adds so much just rumble in the low end that will muddy up your mix, and you have to always get rid of it. So this is like a little traveling detuned square wave that you hear in the background. So because I put reverb, Tora verb, on the entire group that you can hear here, it takes all of these layers right at the end, and it kind of glues them all together with that one reverb. And it generates that, you know, suction sound. It's quite cool. So without it, it's just so dry. You know, so underneath that, I also applied like a little ESM, digital typewriter, sci-fi, military, robotic, robot, cyber, futuristic transition, bounce number 1, which sounds like this. And I think it works. Has that little squeakiness to it. That ARP does the job. Yeah, the ARP is probably the most euphoric part of the whole thing, apart from maybe the... And of course later on, this is probably the driest and like this piano on its own, these are a couple of chords that I played, and of course for some reason I deleted that contact instrument, is what sounds super cheesy on its own. It's just so bizarre, but when it's played with the rest of the layers, it sounds pretty great. You can barely hear it, can you? So I used to screw around with Exhale, which is another output library, which, again, I deleted, and I'm sorry. I just really needed to save CPU, and I didn't realize you could just deactivate with Alt-A. So when you have these sample making sessions, how are they structured? Sample making sessions. I would do drums one day, next day risers. Serum is great for doing risers, especially when you use the noise oscillator, and you just automate the pitch of that noise with all sorts of like fluctuations. It's just so easy to make a riser in Serum alone. Next day, you make, you know, I would advise you guys to do, you know, your own drums, but not necessarily. There's so many different drum samples out there on Splice, especially that you'll just be doing yourself a disservice just making your own drums when there's so many good drums, unless you really like, you know, care for your own handcrafted experience of this whole thing. Then yeah, go ahead and do your own snares. Like let's say we're doing a snare, so I would make my own snare. So I start with a layer of clicky transient. Should we make a snare? Should we just make a quick snare? I could just try to make a snare, maybe not in this project, but let me let's screw it. Let's make a snare. Instrument track. Let's hope I didn't forget. So let's do E-tom. That should be our meat. Let's put them all in like a layer. Instrument layer. We're gonna put that's gonna be our meat. No sound. Why is there no sound? There is no sound. Oh, because probably... There you go. I'm gonna put it outside of the group because... God, my voice is cracking. Classic. I have the master on. I'm gonna need to turn it off. Okay. Like a beefy snare is like 120. Saturator. What's cool about make it slide down a little bit. I don't think we need to click for now. Or maybe kilohertz. Shout out to kilohertz for distortion. How about your glitched ARPs? And those are my favorite. Yeah, guys, I'm gonna get to that. This is gonna be a long stream. Probably should be shorter. Maybe a little disperser on it as well. Okay. Next layer, it's gonna be the click. So just the click. So I want to generate. I want to go to the polygrid and generate like a simple little noise. So this is the cool thing about Bitwig. It has the thing called the grid, which allows you to literally build anything you want, any kind of synthesizer. In this particular case, I'm gonna need like a noise, so I'm gonna solo this. I need a ADSR, which is gonna where's ADSR? Forgetting. Envelope, right? Yeah. That's gonna give us the attack, the release. I want it to be very short, so I'm gonna link the noise to the input, and that should go to the speakers. Okay. Short little click. The problem with generating random noise, obviously, is you're gonna have a different sound each time. So that's a little issue. So what you might want to do before you start actually bouncing those sounds, bounce the noise and only use one particular noise click. What we need is just something like this. So now we have the meat and the click. Let's make another noise. And this time make it longer and make it attack later. That's gonna be our clap. Let me just, so this is the click. At least this is how I do my snares. I don't know, different people have different, ways of doing it. Clap, kinda. Too long, we only want like 2. And of course I could do the EQ in the grid, but again, I'm more comfy just throwing in a Pro Q3 and doing it here. A little echo, some sort of like Pro R. And this is the cool thing about Pro R, you can make certain aspects, certain frequencies of this particular tail to ring out longer than other ones. It's super cool. But in here, we just want to make it simple, no multi-band stuff required. I guess that's cool. And duplicate it again. This is going to be our kind of ring, kind of the sizzle. Sizzle. Look into it. Gonna get rid of the Pro R here. Or maybe I'm gonna make it slightly different. And of course, we want a different EQ here. This is gonna be... That's gonna be our top end, basically, top end tail. So of course you might wanna, do a lot of post-processing to a set of layers like this. But you kind of see where we're getting, right? It's this might go. Maybe the meat might be a little too long, maybe too. Now like a heavy limiter on top of the whole thing, maybe an OTT to throw after everything. Not a perfect snare. This didn't work well. There we go. Decreasing volume of some of this. The click probably should stay. Let me make it shorter. I think this is too long. And a beefy, maybe saturator from kilohertz. Nah, too heavy. Something like a Pro L2 that will limit kind of like the whole. It'll basically squish it into a sausage. That's kind of what you want from a snare. You know? So this is kind of like the basic. I don't know, what you might want to add like a little metallic overtone, kind of like a ring to it, which will require a bunch of like frequency shifting of different signs, FMing different things against each other with a little wetness reverb. It's all sorts of methods of doing these. I bet everyone has a different method of doing their own snare. This is my little snare. And again, all of these are generated using nothing but Bitwig, with, of course, a couple of like inserts, distortion, and disperser. So yeah, the Bitwig plus Fat Filter plus kilohertz. So that's the quick little snarey thingy. Deactivate it. Okay, back with the mastering. Okay, back to the questions, because I definitely missed a bunch of questions. A lot of trial and error, yeah. Honestly, love how Bitwig has everything all out nicely, whereas FL, yeah, no, I could not work in FL. I need to see my waveforms, I need to see everything in the surface, I need to have audio visible, you know, I need to have groups. I know at FL has groups, but it has these like patterns. I never understood having to have pre-programmed patterns that you drag and drop. It's just so bizarre. I do like the little animations of FL though. I guess this. Any questions, guys, so far? Because I know I got into the vocal, I got into the layering of the synths. Oh, bass. There's not much bass in this particular song. There's organization is key. Yeah. EP when? This year, for sure. I understand producers say Ableton is prepared for the workflow because they can do exactly what they intend to do. Yep. Music theory knowledge. I don't really have much music theory knowledge. I used to play piano when I was 7, and then more piano when I was 8, and then I quit music school because I hated it. And then I wanted to get into software engineering, but I decided to stick with music, even though I hated piano really, really much. Apparently, I was crying a lot when my parents were taking me back from school. So, but turned out to be okay in the end. Vulture collab, yeah, this year as well. Yep. When you're layering so many things, how do you control for clashing frequencies? So, when it comes to clashing frequencies, what is cool about Pro Q2, which is something that I think it did have EQ match, but I didn't really use it. Pro Q2 and 3 have this thing called, for example, let's say we have these two supersaws. You don't want the frequencies of either of the supersaws to clash, right? So I'm going to throw a Pro Q3 on each one of those instances. So now there's a supersaw 1 and there's a supersaw 2. So I want to look at the supersaw 1 and I'm just playing them together. And I'm just going to look at supersaw, this is supersaw 2. So on supersaw 2, I'm going to look at supersaw 1, and what it should do is generate like a red area where the frequencies are actually clashing. So these are the two supersaws overlaid with each other. So technically what you can see is in, you know, around 160 to 200 hertz, there's a little bit of a clash. What I could do is equalize that particular frequency or create a notch in this spot or something like this, like a little bell. And obviously those frequencies will completely change depending on the note, on the chord being played, because those are completely different frequencies. If they weren't, they would be just the same note over and over. That's why you can't just generalize having a, you know, it always has to be just like, just visualize it into like a particular, I don't know, like a set, like a frequency range that you want to be working with. Like obviously with a supersaw like this, I don't have any lower notes than like, well, I can't even check the MIDI because again, I bounced out all the audio. General workflow, I'll get to that in a second. So with EQ match, looking at supersaw 2. So what I would do is just make sure it sounds okay. If somehow the frequencies in this range complement the same frequencies in the exact same range of the second supersaw, because they're perhaps like wider, maybe they're, you know, panned differently, then there's no really any issue. If you really want to control it and make sure that everything is kind of in place, group them all together, throw in an EQ on the whole thing, and make sure you're doing some sort of dynamic EQing on it. In this case, I'm actually not, but I'm just kind of making sure that the entire group as a whole also doesn't get outside of your frequency range that it doesn't want to. Basically, a lot of high pass when it comes to this stuff. Sub bass, you want to keep mono. You know, super saws, all sorts of simps shouldn't go any lower than like 150. That's already quite low, unless we're talking bass, of course, which is, you know, just simple Reeses like this. For instance, I have a sub. Obviously, just having these kind of low fundamentals that end anywhere around, you know, 300, 500, and muddy up. Like, I don't want to say muddy up, but they kind of, if you group them together and you put like a support bass underneath it with it, for example, this little Reese kind of, you know, this heavy high pass Reese like this. I cut out all the frequencies from the sub because from this particular Reese, it goes like this. So I cut them out because all those frequencies are actually already done by the sub, right? They're already all here. And so the sub does the low frequencies. This Reese does all the high-end kind of sizzle. And the middle is filled out by all these synths, right? It's kind of where we're peaking. That's why I still want to control it with like a little, you know, dynamic EQ, which in this case it's not dynamic, but whatever. So sometimes what I advise you guys to do, put an EQ on the whole master and just look at, I still want to control it with like a little, you know, dynamic EQ, which in this case it's not dynamic, but whatever. So sometimes what I advise you guys to do, put an EQ on the whole master and just look at, let's say, if you have all sorts of different subs, like for example, here's a different sub, two different subs, two different patches, from this to this, and there's some like different sub here. So make sure that they're all at the root note of the sub is at the specific level. Sorry, we're just looking at this, this, and this. We got the root at exactly 0, right? Want to make sure that throughout it is mostly my sub. Yeah, I just back in the day I would just keep it a pure sine wave sub, and saturate kind of and keep all my support bass and support growls and Reeses kind of like this, where it would almost touch the sub, and then group them together and saturate them together. The difference between like limiting them together in a group, subs and basses, and saturating them together is because some of the frequencies of the sub, like the higher harmonics of the sub, and the lower harmonics of the support basses will kind of like intertwine. Oh, are we live? Hey guys, are we live? Hey guys, we live? I think it shows that we're live. We good? Everyone just refresh your browser. Base. We good? We good? Those questions because I'm only seeing 4 messages per chat, which is crazy. Actually, we good? see like 4 for some reason. I don't know. I don't get it. Just paused for a second. Okay. Good. We good. Workflow. I remember the question about workflow from someone. We good? I'm gonna do a song from someone. I usually start. Okay, so I don't want to say that there's like a specific